You know what else is important? Having an SD card in the recorder.
Having an SD card plugged in.
All right, take 2. This is Heroscape.
Never heard of it.
Come on,
totally unfamiliar with this game.
Come on, guys. You got to be a little more excited. It's Heroscape.
Heroscape.
There you go. That's what I'm looking for.
I'm so glad Steven spent half an hour putting this beautiful map together and not me.
This is the ultimate larger-than-life game.
I mean,
It's
this is the ultimate toy game.
Yes.
It
Exactly.
is. It's like it's almost like a lifestyle game, like 40K or one of the other miniature games.
But without the pain and suffering that goes along with it.
Yeah, without all the pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Or at least there's no pain and suffering involved on my end. So
Yeah, and it shows up out of the box pretty, and it's got a million little pieces. And granted, this has not been printed in 15 or 20 years
well,
at this point.
I don't think you could do it now. I don't think it'd be economical.
I agree. Excuse me. The good news is that there's so much of it out there that for $100 you can get yourself set up pretty doggone easily. You may not be getting in a brand new box, but there's all kinds of stuff out there for anybody who wants to try it.
I mean, you can get a base set and a bag for like $40.
Yep.
And yeah, you don't need a box. All of my Heroscape is stored in big plastic tubs.
And
And that seems
kills
to be
me a little bit more every time I see it.
I mean, the boxes are big and unwieldy, and they tore very easy.
And the pieces were very carefully put in, and you just can't, after every single time you play, reinsert all those pieces.
No, I just meant you just have all the
way.
figures loose in this giant plastic tote.
But they're tough, so
I know
they
they're tough.
survive.
I know they're tough.
He's talking about finding particular
No,
figures.
I am talking about how they just like rub all together and jostle, and they get dumped. And every time I play this game, I think of my foray into Warhammer, and I'm like, oh, but they're tough. It doesn't matter.
They're tough. They got
They've got the bendy weapons, but it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, some of the spears are kind of curves, I guess, and some of the guys look like they're laying down. But that's Heroscape. That's how the figures are.
Yep, and everything comes painted. You're ready to go. Lay it out on the map and get started. And the rule set is as intuitive as they get. Things just make sense in Heroscape. So, this game kind of gets it on 4 different places. There's this whole puzzle building aspect to it. There's a collecting aspect to it, which is a lot of fun. There's almost like a role play. There's an adventure play pretend that kids just love, even if they're not playing the game. And then finally, there's the game itself with this. Even the advanced rules are very, very straightforward. Everything makes sense the way it works, and you throw a lot of dice, and so you sometimes you get bad patches of luck, but sometimes you get great patches of luck. Everything comes around. It's a good time every time you play.
Yeah, really the only difference between the basic rules and the advanced rules is you flip the card over and you use the special abilities.
Yep.
That's really the only difference. And maybe line of sight. There might be some line of sight differences between the two, but honestly, there's no reason, unless you're playing with 5-year-olds, to play the basic game.
Go straight to the advanced game.
I do like how all the different units have different. Most of them have weird abilities and do random things, and you're encouraged to stay within your faction, but it's not a requirement.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of synergies between factions that you. I mean,
yeah, but you are like a lesser player if you mix and match poorly.
Well, no,
John.
so there's factions. So there's 6 factions, I guess. We're playing with Jandar and Utgar, and
how many 3 factions do you have, John?
Yeah, actually, I do have 3 factions, but my main faction is I got to turn the card over. Is Vidar. So a couple of Vidars.
So I think there's 6 factions. So in addition to factions, there are also different subgroups. So for instance, I happen to be playing with all humans, where there can also be a group of all orcs or a group of all elves. So there's groupings of that nature, subgroups that can all work together as well, even though they're in different factions.
And there's also like profession. There are soldiers. Now, a soldier may be a Roman soldier, maybe a World War II soldier, but whatever. And there are special things that apply to soldiers differently from others as well. So there's 4 or 5 different ways they mix and match.
There's 3 different layers of synergies that can be possible. So, yeah, I mean, if you build a bad army, you build a bad army, but it's possible to build good armies that span different factions.
Yes, and sometimes surprisingly so. That things seem to work out that you almost didn't intend.
Stylistically, though, I just feel like it's a poor choice.
And that's right. So that's another part of the game. That's what I'm talking about. There's a part of this game that is, if I'm going to play World War II, I'm going to play World War II. Or if I'm going to do the Western guys, I'm going to do all the Western guys. I'm not going to mix it up. You don't put a dragon with Western guys. That's just not right.
Yeah, I want to be the samurais. Why would I have a Viking with my samurais? That's crazy.
So you can show up to game
can you
night.
Imagine choosing an army that isn't stylistically thematic?
That would
thematic?
be crazy.
That would be
Sam.
nonsense.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, we've done it anyway.
We have done it anyway.
I know. What do you mean we?
I mean, you've got dragons and orcs, great.
Dragon and orcs.
And a dinosaur being ridden by
an orc.
A weird guy.
It's an orc.
I mean, I have Vikings and Irishmen.
Okay, that's totally consistent.
See, and mine are consistent as well.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sorry, they're Scots. Sorry.
I have Revolutionary War soldiers, genetically modified gorillas with cyborg attachments, what is, for all intents and purposes, a Medusa, and then, of course, the token Native American character as well into the mix, that he's actually like a normal human. So
yeah, okay, I see the...
There's absolutely no symmetry here at all. No, it's a complete mess. Yeah, this is Heinz 57 over here.
Yeah, and sometimes, when you've got limitations on how you build your army. So, for instance, we're playing with 350 points.
Which is exactly what I have.
And we also are playing with 10 bases worth of figures, which is exactly what you have. You have to sometimes work within those confines. So, it's not like, on this particular map, you could field 10 squads of Roman legionnaires. Yeah, it meets the point spread, but you don't have enough spaces to put that many Roman legionnaires out. So
all I'm hearing is a bunch of excuses.
I mean, you could spend the points on them, but you've only got 10 spaces to put people out. So
I'll just bring them in when they die.
Usually I do play an army that is kind of a grouping, but this time that just didn't feel right. So every time you sit down to the table, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
and there's
part
so
of the
much
fun.
variety to choose from that you can really go in any direction.
Yeah, and the last few times that I've played, I've tried very hard to make the conscious decision to play factions or play armies or play figures that I don't normally play, because I typically go with the Gruts, the orcs, or I typically go with the Valkyrie, the Valkyrie type angelic warrior people. So those are the 2 factions I typically go with, but this time I'm trying out the Vikings, which I don't think I've ever played. So I'm pretty interested to see how this goes.
Right.
So, any parting thoughts on what didn't we cover from the last time?
Well, just some basic rules is you have these little shields that tell you which units you're going to play in which order, and then you roll bunches of dice on attack and on defense.
Yeah, so I guess the basic running gear is you have 4 order markers, 1, 2, 3, and X. And so you place out these order markers on your cards, and basically that's going to be the order in which they move and activate and attack. So you'll flip over your 1, or you'll turn your 1 around, and that'll be the army that you use. Next person will do their 1, and the next person will do their 1, and it's back to you. You do your 2, so on and so forth. The X is there as a bluff. You can play with it or without it, but it's always kind of fun to look over at how your opponent's order markers are being set up and kind of guessing, all right, is he actually taking a double move with Mimron, or is one of those a bluff?
Right.
I'm going to put all 4 order tokens on the dragon.
We need to put them on the Gruts, because the Gruts give the dragon the...
I know what I said. I didn't misspeak.
Yeah, so, it took me about half an hour to put this map together, but I tried my best to integrate as many features as I could. So I have some walls, I have a couple of outcroppings. I've got trees. I even
Water.
have the Morrow swarm in the middle just to block line of sight and look really cool. And finally was able to put a bridge into a map. It doesn't seem like bridges would be hard, but for some reason they kind of are.
That's because they're a set length.
They're set length, and you got to get them up to a certain height, and then you got to build around that. It just, I don't know. I'm happy with the map that I built, and I'm hoping that it provides a pretty good experience for us.
I think it looks very nice.
I'm ready to
How
get into
about
it.
we get to it and battle for all time?
Let's kill us a dragon.
Oh man, I want Grimnack to eat a musketeer.
It'll happen. All right, so the battle for all time has finished, and the dragon has been vanquished.
Yes, indeed, and the Tyrannosaur as well.
Yeah,
That damn Tyrannosaur.
that's how you know it was a good game when it
Tyrannosaur
elicits that
did
kind
a
of
lot
reaction.
of damage.
I mean, just ate my 6 health hero.
That was a great roll.
And 6 health.
That was a great roll.
And I mean, on top of that, his ability was the
more damage he took,
the more damage he had on him, the more dice a squad attached to him got
in
to
their
roll.
attack.
Yeah, then he should have
So
walked
you-
up
you
to the
want him
one
a
thing
little
on the
hurt.
board that could eat him.
Yeah.
I was
take
not
your shot.
expecting you to roll a 19.
What was it, like a 17 or something, right?
It was
You need
a
to roll?
16 or higher, so it was a 25% chance.
Okay.
Well, I was expecting to. I mean, I put a hurt on Grimnack before.
You did.
Before you swallowed me whole.
It was very, very.
And that was a
cinematic.
team kill. Steven's guys came in and really softened
this
Grimnack
this
up.
was really a 2v1.
Well,
Did
Sam,
you guys even attack each other at all?
we
Yes,
did,
yeah.
but you inserted yourself square in the middle and went completely on offense. So
And it
in
was
the
cool.
true spirit of Heroscape, you took 2 great big lizards and went right down the middle and went after everybody. And that is what makes Heroscape the coolest game on earth, because you can just completely throw in with wild abandon and just hope for the best. And you know what? You don't mind losing at Heroscape as long as you do it in a legendary fashion.
Yeah, I went out in style. I'm not complaining. It was fun.
And the game's only an hour. This particular game was only an hour, so technically we could probably squeeze another game in. And when your games are that short, who cares?
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
don't think it too much. Don't try to be too strategic. Don't try to be too
Yeah,
safe.
I mean, I could have wiggled the dragon around
Yeah,
for a
you could've.
while, but that would have been lame. So instead, I
you
just
don't do it. That's
I
right.
just
That's
breathed
No
fire
guts,
everywhere and,
no
and
glory.
died.
right.
Yeah.
So at one point, Steven's hero is charging up the bridge. The dragon is on the bridge. Steven is charging straight at the dragon. The dragon breathes and misses.
I mean, it's straight out of Arthurian legend.
Yes, and Steven's hero gets up and keeps charging straight at the big lizard. I mean, it was just it's larger than life.
Yeah.
And you don't get that out of games with little wooden meeples and playing a card to move a guy. It's not the nature of it.
I mean, those types of games, it's abstracted out. You kind of use your imagination. Here in Heroscape, it is in your face.
Yeah,
It is, and you kind of got to play into it a bit, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You can't play with you can't overthink things. You can't go, oh well, what's the most strategic way to play this? I mean, I guess you could, but it's not as fun.
That's for tournament play.
But
Yeah.
but even, I mean, at one point your dragon was facing the wrong way, and you want to breathe, and I'm like, you can't do that. What are you doing? Are you breathing between your legs? And you're just like, oh no, she's just gonna fart. That's the breath weapon this time. And it's just that's the kind of humor, that's the kind of just over the top that Heroscape brings.
And by the way, it is within the rules for her to breathe behind her.
Straight backwards.
Yeah. It's essentially you get a straight line off of either base in any direction.
Okay, well that's fair enough.
So it's not 6 lines that she has access to. It's actually 10 lines that she has access to.
Okay, because she has 2 different base hexes that she
Yeah.
can be shooting from.
She's got a long, stretchy neck, John.
Yeah, and frankly, when you are the biggest lizard on the board, everybody is worried about you as much. And
I know. That's-
It was funny because that was the initial thought. But then Grimneck
Yeah, Grimnack came in
became a problem.
and just kind of went, I just gobbled up your character. And
So
I'm like,
Grimnack
oh,
is
crap.
a Tyrannosaurus, I guess a Tyrannosaurus.
He's an orc riding a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's kind of eel looking.
Yeah, there's an orc on its back. You sometimes forget there's an orc riding him.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But yeah, he just, not only does he get to attack with a normal attack, he also gets to eat.
Just swallow people.
Yeah. So if it's a regular guy, he just gets to eat him. If it's a hero, you got to roll a 16 or higher.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah, suck it.
And Steven got mad.
And I forgot that you could just eat a squad guy. Just walk up and gobble him up. And I think that was how one of my Gorillinators went.
It was, yeah.
And you just said, yep, that's the end of him. And I'm like, ooh, okay. So apparently all focus needs to be on Grimnack. But you had a squad of orc guys that allowed you to double attack because the orcs get the ability to allow some other character
It's
with
called
whatever.
It's called bonding.
Beast bonding.
So that was beast bonding. I had human bonding and hero bonding.
So I'm looking at it and thinking to myself, because I can see where your shields are, and I'm like, he's got more shields on the orcs. I'm better off killing the orcs. Because once the orcs are dead, Grimnack doesn't get to do this thing anymore until he puts a marker on Grimnack.
Yeah, have to wait for the next round.
Right. So Sam came out with this highly tuned army. He had 2 nice bonding things going on that allowed him to do a whole lot more. I didn't have any bonding at all, but I had a couple of pretty solid guys in my back pocket, including a woman that essentially stares at you when you drop dead. So that was a pretty solid piece to have in my back pocket. And I had the Brave Arrow character, who I really didn't get out and get a chance to play because Grimnack wandered right into the middle of everything, and that became the center of the battle, and everything had to focus there. So the game told its story. I mean, with a couple of us making a couple of different key decisions, Sam running Grimnack into the middle of everything, it's like, okay, that's where the battle's going to be today. I mean, we're along for the ride whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and I don't know if I consciously made this decision or not, but I did not take any ranged units. And I don't know why it ended up that way, but having a full melee team against, well, your team was all ranged.
Yeah, John was almost all ranged.
Yep.
And then you've got Grimnack that just eats everything.
And the fire-breathing dragon.
You don't want to be next to it.
And you had archers.
And archers.
It was going to be an uphill battle.
And for a minute there, you sounded pretty tragic, Stephen. You sounded like, well, there's no way I'm going to win. I might.
There
as well
wasn't any
just
way I was going to win.
Plunge in.
If we had completed this game, you would have mopped the floor with me.
I would have finished off your last couple of guys. But, when the second huge lizard falls over, us mere humans on the table all sit there and say,
hey, man, we good.
Looks like plenty of barbecue for all of us.
Yeah, man, we good.
Let's sit down and eat.
And I lost. But it was a lot of fun, right?
So did you really lose? If you had a good time, did you really lose?
No, not really.
And
I had a good time.
you gave every bit as good as you got. So there's no shame in that either. I mean that was a good battle. And it's funny. I'll come to this game and I'll go, well, do I really want to spend the time to pick out the guys? And then you play and you're like, oh yeah, this was absolutely worth the time to get pulled out. And
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one that set up the board, and I can't remember if I mentioned it the first time when we weren't recording or if I mentioned it the second time when we were, but it was at least a half-hour investment for me to get the board set up. So, the reason we don't play Heroscape so much anymore, because if I had the space and could have a Heroscape board up all the time, we would play a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But I essentially have to take down the Heroscape board every time my in-laws come into town because the space that we're using here in the cellar is actually our in-law suite. And so when they're in town, obviously I have to put all the toys away. But, there's a certain aspect of putting the maps together that's also fun. I get that it might not be for everybody, but for us, or at least for me, it's an enjoyable part of the game is to, have a vision in your head of how you want the map to kind of be, and then digging through the bucket of pieces that I have, because I've got like 3 base sets and then one of each of the terrain sets, and then at least one of each of the expansions. So I got a bucket of terrain, and just putting it all together and making something that comes out and has good play on it is actually pretty rewarding.
And this turned out to be a great map. It's got a couple of pinch points that worked really well. And there was favored ground, and there were a couple of spots where the battle really went into the favored ground, and that I think that made a big difference on how all of us were approaching the battle.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of gave up the high ground about halfway through, or even a little bit earlier, because I wanted to dig in.
Right.
And just kind of get into melee, and that worked. It was a ton of fun. It worked out all right for me. But if I'd taken a slightly different force, or I wanted to play things a little bit differently, maybe I wouldn't have given up the high ground. Maybe I would have camped out on the bridge.
I honestly thought you were going to stay on that ground on that one end of the bridge where there was a lot of higher stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm going to be shooting uphill, and
honestly, if I had your army, John, I would have, and I would have just sat up there on that bridge, and I would have just rained fire down on both of your heads all day.
Yeah.
But as it was, about half of my army was melee only, and I was like, well, you know what? Let's get stuck in.
Yep.
Yeah, and I built this map thinking that Chris was going to join us tonight, but he had an engagement that he couldn't get out of, and so there are parts of the board that just weren't touched. So there's a little deciduous forest over on John's side, and there's some ruins on our side, where if we were setting up in the four corners, those two areas would have come into play more. But because I set up in the middle to kind of make a triangle, the middle of the board became the focus, and that's kind of where all the action happened, except for the bridge with the dragon and Finn, whatever Finn's name is. Finn the
Dragon
Viking.
Slayer now.
Finn the Viking Dragon Slayer.
Yeah, and you came to us. You came across the middle of the board.
Well, I had to.
You had to.
I was a melee, so I had to close the gap and engage. Otherwise, you would just kind of pick me off at range.
Yeah.
So once again, this game that is now just shy of 20 years old proves itself still fully capable of just producing a great time anytime you want to set it up and get it out and play. And, for games like this, technically I guess it's a dudes on a map game. It's a combat sort of game. The line of sight rules, which can be very confusing in a lot of these games, are very simple. If, you put your head down on the side of the board, and if you can see from your guy to the other guy, that's line of sight, and you can take that shot. Some altitude gives you an advantage, and it's very easy because the altitudes are very discrete. The pieces, just the way these puzzle pieces set together, it's very easy to tell. You get +1 die if you're higher. You get +1 defense die if your attacker is lower. So the rules are about as simple and as straightforward as you can get, which makes it really aids in the flow of the game. Since the rule set is so simple, you are focusing on that drama. You're making the jokes. You're talking about the fact that you've got, redcoats fighting against Vikings that are fighting against dragons that are fighting against whatever. I mean, it's, in a lot of ways, everything that's going on the board is completely absurd, but somehow completely intense, both at the same time.
And I do really like the map. I mean, I think the map should get some credit for just making it a really easy game to play.
Yeah.
I mean, I've played some other, dudes on a map games, and terrain can be a hassle.
Yep.
Right?
You're right.
Especially because you want it to be interesting, but then you get into hills, and it's like, well, how do I put my guys on this hill? There's not really a space for them to stand, and they're going to fall down, and I've got this big old tank that just makes things awkward, and here it's all very simple, right? You've got everything's in discrete hexes, and there's
there's very distinct levels, and then you've got features that block line of sight, or if you're adjacent to them, they provide you with defensive bonuses.
Yeah.
If you walk in water, you have to stop.
Yep.
It's that easy, unless you have water walking, which is an ability.
And at one point, Sam, you were looking to put Mimring down below the bridge down in the water, and the rule's pretty simple. Hey, if you can't stand the guy up on the spot, then at that point he doesn't go there.
Yeah,
so
Mimring
the model
wasn't going to fit. The wings were too bad.
Yep,
were too big.
The shape of the model aids in the way the game is played as well.
Yeah, so the base would have fit, but with the way his wings kind of or flayed out towards the top, the bridge wouldn't have allowed him to lay flat on the on his base. So that would have been an illegal movement. And, you know, it's really cool how, because like, all right, so the other thing with the bridge is I believe it's 5 hexes off of, I think it's 5 hexes high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5 hexes high. Most squad figures can fit underneath the bridge. There are a couple squad figures that have their swords up, like they're holding them up in the air. They cannot fit under the bridge because their sword is in the way. But some of the other ones could. So
doesn't fit. The Gorillinator can fit. We're actually pushing guys under the bridge right now to see who fits and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Does it fit? So it's a super simple system that, I mean, you can't ask for this kind of simplicity. And then when when they're building the figures, when they're building the armies, they're taking all this into account. But as the end user, it's very easy. It flows. It's very intuitive. And, it shouldn't take a person more than 5 minutes to figure out how to play Heroscape.
Yeah, because it's just so intuitive. It makes sense.
It feels like a beer and pretzels war game.
Yeah.
Which is enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, I would certainly have, a glass of scotch or a beer or 2 or 3.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's a game that you could play with your 7 or 8 year old and still have a blast. And frankly, your 7 or 8 year old kid could have 2 of his friends over and they could play it as well because the rules are straightforward enough that that's okay.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's very scalable. So, yes, 1-on-1 is the way to go, but you can play 2v2 where, you've got 2 people on one side of the map and you're trying to take out the other 2 people on the other side of the map. I've made a 6-player map where for the first 4 rounds you cannot attack the 2 people to your left and right, but you can attack the 3 that are across from you.
Okay.
And then after round 4, it's anything goes. There's a kit to it that you can just make whatever kind of rules you want. And the other thing that people do, and there's a whole subreddit that's dedicated to it, is people use this as a role-playing system.
Really?
Yeah, so they'll build caves and
build their world.
They'll build their world and use the terrain and everything. And then they'll use the monsters that came in the D&D sets or some of the ones that come in the...
So you mean the components, not the rules?
Oh, both.
Both. Huh. I wouldn't have guessed there was
enough... So they do combat with the Heroscape rule set.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I haven't gone that hard into it, but I imagine there's a modified...
I wouldn't have guessed there was enough meat on the bones for this rule set to be used for an RPG.
Yeah,
it's fine for a light war game, but
I suppose it would depend on how much advancement your characters have and how you would set up how those rules.
Yeah,
work.
I mean it's all there. I haven't explored it, so I can't really speak.
I mean,
to
component wise, frankly, I'm in the back of my head. I'm toying with I could go on eBay and get some of this terrain.
Yeah, and considering what it is by modern standards, it is crazy inexpensive. $100 gets you in 2 feet. I mean, you are all set to go. All the terrain.
Frankly, the problem is it's all hexes.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think I have any system right now that uses hexes. Mm-hmm. You can convert them, but it's an adjustment.
But I've discussed this before. I like team games because it allows you to buddy up with somebody and have them. You can coach them, you can help them because you're working on the same team, and it gives you the ability to take somebody who's younger or somebody who's less experienced and help them ease into a game that they don't have otherwise. And this is a game, and I've done this. I've done this with my boys. A friend of mine brought over his boy, and we had a all-out battle. Great big long map. Boys on one side, boys on the other side, everybody rushing towards the middle, where the people that start on the left side of the board are all one team, and the people that start on the right side of the board are all one team. And it just works absolutely as well as a team game. It can be individuals where you can play 3, 4, 5, 6, however many, and everybody's against everybody. You can mix that up any way you want, and it's just the core rule set is just so foundational that you can take it in any direction you want.
Yeah, so I was just looking through Master Set 3, the Battle for the Underdark Heroscape instructions.
That's the D&D version.
This is the D&D version. So it's not a role-playing system, but it's kind of like a role-playing campaign that you can do. So,
like Gloomhaven.
Yeah, I would say. So essentially what you do is you can either buy 4 sets or you can build each room one at a time and play through.
Okay.
And so what happens is you go into the first room, and the first room is called like the altar room or something. And there's a glyph in the middle of the room and some monsters that are surrounding it, and your objective is to secure the glyph and defeat half the monsters in such amount of time. And what it does, instead of leveling up your characters, you get glyphs that you can take from the first room into the second room and into the third room, and they augment your hero. So it might be use this glyph to give you +1 health or +1 whatever, or it could be use this to blow up an area like a fireball or something. So I mean, there is a lot that you can do. Like a creative person could go really crazy with a standard Heroscape set and have a completely different game that is still Heroscape.
I mean, that's one of the things that I like about Heroscape is, I think every time I've played, you see totally different. I mean, yes, part of this is to do with your collection, Stephen. But every time I play Heroscape, I see totally different units. The board's totally different, but all of the units have different abilities, right? And it's like it's crazy. Like, yeah. So there's similarities, and you can kind of see like, okay, these are balanced if you look at the points and the stats. But I mean, frankly, some models feel like they're better than others.
Yeah, they are. And that's the point system allows you to even that out.
It doesn't feel like a perfectly balanced game, and that's okay.
Yeah,
it's still a lot of fun, and you just be a good sport about it.
Right, and the game kind of lends yourself to that good sport.
But I think the system is flexible enough to allow for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not like we've talked a lot about some games being very polished, being very tightly tuned. And Heroscape isn't.
I would say it's medium tuned.
It's well tuned, but it's not tightly tuned. And it's
there's evidence of that. I'll shout out Heroscapers.com. It's the Heroscaping community gathering place on the internet. There's a project that they've been doing where they've essentially gone through all of the retail available Heroscape figures. And I say retail available Heroscape figures because they as a community have designed hundreds of additional figures that you can 3D print out, or you can repurpose your own figures, or they use HeroClix figures for these different as proxies. But I digress. There's a project that they've done where they've gone back and revalued all of the Heroscape units that were official units, and they call it the Heroscape Delta Project. And essentially what they've done is they've, I guess through hundreds of plays and maybe cross-referencing abilities and stat blocks and whatever, they've adjusted the values of all the different units. And what you'll see is there are probably, of the hundreds of units that there are only like 7 that are way out of whack. The rest of them, I mean, I briefly glanced at this document, and I say briefly, like I looked through the entire list just to see what I thought was broken, to see if it was broken. There were only like 7 units that stood out to me as like over 20 or 30 point variance. The rest of them are within 5 to 10 points of each other, where they naturally were. So, I mean,
all they wrung it out a little bit when they did the development.
Yeah.
And so, I think, frankly, my biggest issue, it isn't that some units are more powerful than others, because that happens. It's whatever. You pay different points for them. Who cares? The problem is some units are boring compared to others.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's always filler units.
Right? It's like, okay, what does this guy do? Whatever. Like, I had all these orcs, and they rolled dice, I guess, but
They aren't as exciting as playing a dragon or something like that.
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
I mean,
even
it's
as,
like the-
even as like basic infantry goes, there's more interesting.
But when we were picking, Sam, one of the things I pointed out to you, I'm going through a whole set of the cards and the whatever the faction is, that's the red pieces, and I'm like, these are the ugly pieces. And some people love the guys that are skinned with red on them, or they like the skulls,
the
and that
marrow
kind of crap.
that's like
Yeah.
Some
decayed
people
people.
just love that stuff, and I'm like, no, I would much rather be playing the Roman legions. I would much rather be playing something like that. And it's just, I think everybody comes to the game and they've got the kind of things that they like to do, and they grab their guys because it doesn't matter what your hobby is. Your guys are in this set somewhere. There's somebody here that's going to appeal to you.
And you know that was another fantastic thing about, you know, the original release of Heroscape. It was a conglomeration of like every theme possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got your Roman Legion, you've got these nasty looking Maros, which are like half decayed
they're
swamp
undead
people.
people. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you've got zombies. There's
Yeah,
zombies.
there's
There's zombies,
You
there's
have to have-
dinosaurs, there's
The
giant
zombies are hilarious.
spiders,
There's samurai.
Yep.
There's Men
everything.
in Black. There's Valkyries.
Yeah.
Yep,
There's
science
robots.
fiction-y stuff. There's
Yeah.
robots. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah, the zombies are hilarious because you have to have line of sight on their heads. So you have to essentially headshot the zombies.
So the sense of humor is there. as
Yeah, I
well.
mean, and that's all within the framework of how this game works.
and that's what allows it to tell the story.
Absolutely.
The fact that they found ways to make that part of the game.
And you know, I remember when I was trying to buy sets of zombies back in the day because I missed that wave. I was buying them secondhand on eBay. They were going for ridiculous amounts of money because that was about the time that was it Last Night on No, what was the zombie game that came out after Last Night on Earth? Like it was there was a zombie game that came out around 2012, 2013.
I do not recall.
There was like all the rage, and essentially what people were trying to do was make a Heroscape version of it. So there were people with like 10 and 15 squads of zombies, and the idea would be to start at one end of the map and have the zombie hordes start at the other end of the map, and to get all the way through them. You didn't have to kill them, but you had to
Had to
break
get past them.
you had to
Huh.
break a wedge through them. Was the one scenario I saw. And I just thought it was really cool and ingenious, and just goes to prove that with a little creativity, you can really come up with some really interesting concepts with this system.
So who won? Who do we start with giving ratings?
I think if the game had played out, I think John would have been our eventual victor.
I think so. He did still have an untouched hero.
He had an untouched hero. He had
Two riflemen
he
and
had
a
two
cyber
riflemen
gorilla.
and a yeah. So
and one right. One
I had
girl
one
and a-
hero with some damage and one
guy.
one dragon slayer.
One dragon
That's
slayer.
right. Dropped a dragon. So
So yeah, I think had it played out, I think John would have won. So let's do the thing, John.
and I think it's fair to give Sam last word because he had the most glorious death.
He did. He did indeed have the most noteworthy death on the board. So let's start with John. John, let's do the thing.
So through the years, my tagline for this game has been, quote, damn near perfect game, end quote. And it's just it hits on all the different levels. It's like Lego, where you get to build and create things that can be quite beautiful. You can collect, you get wrapped up in the characters, so there's sort of a role-playing aspect to it, and you use funny accents depending on which characters you're playing.
And you definitely can pick favorites and
Yep.
have favorites. Like for a long time, you had Sergeant Drake Alexander as a bumper sticker on the back of your
Absolutely.
van. And
Absolutely.
how many people are rolling around with Heroscape bumper stickers?
and then on top of it, and those are the sidelines. I mean, the game itself, the actual game, the combat game when you play, that's the fourth thing. I mean, so you got to get to the fourth thing before you actually get to what the game is. So as far as I'm concerned, I mean, as sevens go, this is just the most dependable, most go all day game. And If you want to, you can build yourself a couple of 1,500-point armies and play this all day long on a rainy Saturday and just have a great, great session.
Yeah, if you want to see some crazy setups, again, go to Heroscapers.com and take a look through some of the gallery. You can also go to the Heroscape subreddit. It's not as active as Heroscapers, but I mean, there are maps that are like tens and 20s of square feet large.
Yep.
And I've seen people with, like, there was a guy that I think was able to recreate the Battle of Helm's Deep in Heroscape.
Wow.
And I looked at that, I'm like, that is amazing. That is something I will never accomplish. Not with my collection and not with how much money I'm willing to spend on Heroscape, but good on you, dude. That's amazing. But yeah, it's such an amazing. It's just amazing what you can do with this system. There have been times where I've had like 2 or 3 boards set up next to each other that were small, that were designed for, 2 people to get head to head and into battle like within the first turn. There was a time where I built a map that took up an entire pool table that had distinct zones. Like there was a mountain with some glacier. There was a volcano on one side. There was a cave. Well, it was an abstract of a cave.
You had climate zones.
There were climate zones. There was a castle in the middle, and it was just this big monstrosity that I had a hell of a time designing. Like I probably spent 2 or 3 days designing that map, and just that to me was fun. And we played it, and it wasn't as fun because we weren't close to each other. But you know what? I did it, and it was great. And there's a picture of it somewhere. I just don't know where. Anyway, there's just so much that you can do with this system that I can't imagine giving this any other rating than a 7, because I mean, it's literally one of my favorite games. It's no matter anything that happens, this one is always going to be in the collection.
Yep, exactly.
At least in some
yeah,
capacity.
This is a game that may need to go into your will so that there's not an argument when you pass on.
Yeah. So, Samuel, it is now your turn. Why don't you, before you give your rating, why don't you eulogize your good friend Mimring?
Mimring? I mean, yeah, Mimring. See, really, in my mind, the main character here wasn't Mimring. It was
Grimnack.
Grimnack.
Yes, I agree.
Right? Grimnack was out here
neck deep in baddies.
Yeah, he led his squad neck deep into the vicious human ambush, trying to clear the path of his good friend Mimring to escape.
Is he painting us as the bad guys?
He is painting us as the bad guys.
He ended up falling. He put up a good fight and he fell.
Innocent Grimnack.
Poor innocent Grimnack was
Grimnack.
murdered in cold blood, and Mimring just kind of lost it, and she could have escaped. She could have just flown away, but she had to try and make it right
and try to avenge Grimnack's murder.
That's right. She had to try and avenge that murder, and it didn't work out. But you know what? It was a close thing. I enjoyed this game. It checks a lot of boxes for me. And to be honest, now I've thought about it some. It reminds me of the skirmish war games that have come out.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
Like Necromunda and Warcry, or
I could see that. Yeah.
I mean, even like Unmatched has a little bit of this. I know we haven't played Unmatched yet, but I've got a set and I've been reading up on it and watching videos. But
this has for lack of a better term, a toy aspect to it.
It does have a toy aspect to it,
and I think to a certain extent that gives you permission to leave your adulthood, to one side and just fall into this like a kid and scream and yell and like I said, do the stupid voices and pretend to breathe across the other players when you're playing a dragon.
Yeah. And like, I want to sit down and like, I want to get into this, right? I want to come like write up a like, I don't know, rules for a campaign where you play different battles with different forces and there's a plot, and it really makes it makes me feel like a GM, right? Like when you're running an RPG, I'm like, yeah, let's get into it.
Wow, right? Maybe there's 5 parts to this game. I hadn't considered that.
Because I was not playing this game to win, right? From like turn 2 on, I was playing this game to tell a good story.
Yep.
And it was a blast. Because normally when we play games, I play to win.
You sure do. and you do win.
You're looking for all the loopholes.
Yeah.
Looking for the best figure. I mean, and part of it is also like if I had handed you all of the character cards last week and said, all right, take this home and pick out your army, you probably could have found the best army possible.
I think he did pretty good. He certainly did better than I did.
Well, sure, but
Grutz and Grimnack are that's an easy.
Yeah, they're pretty best. I didn't look through all of the cards. Yep. I looked through about half of one of the 2 stacks you guys had out when I got here.
And you found your matches.
And I was like, well, these look cool enough. I don't want to spend all night picking out an army.
Oh man, if he had seen or taken the Deathwalkers, that would have been hilarious. I feel like the Deathwalkers have Sam written all over them.
Are they the zombies? Or
Next time.
Else?
No, they're like they're cyborgs. They're like the evil cyborgs, the Deathwalkers.
Yeah, but no, I
like
picked
one of them basically walks into a group of people and then explodes and kills everything within I think 4 spaces of it or something.
That's pretty cool.
It's ridiculous.
Pretty cool. No, I picked a thematic force with 2 big stompy monsters because I wanted to have a good time, and then I ran them into the middle of the board and killed a bunch of people, and it was fun.
So your rating, Sam?
My rating, I got to give it a 7.
Right then.
Yeah.
So there is consensus this time. All 3 of us give this game a 7.
It's ridiculous how we can finally agree on the pedigree of a particular game. Like usually one of us is just way off in left field, and some of the other ones, some of the rest of us are like,
don't see where that's coming from.
Why can't you just like this game like the rest of us?
Yeah.
I think we've reached a consensus, and this is.
I like this. I really enjoy, like John was saying, there's a toy aspect to this where it's just like you just want to mess with it.
Yes, exactly.
You just want to mess with it. It's like with Lego sets, right? When I was a kid, I had a Lego bucket, right? And I would just dig through the Lego bucket and I'd build whatever and I'd, mess with stuff. And now that I'm an adult, I'm not terribly interested in a Lego bucket because there's not enough colors to do everything in the right color, and the brick sizes don't match, and the
they
things
don't look
just
like dragons,
and they just don't line up right. But you go buy a Lego set. I got a diorama of the Star Wars trench run, and you open it up, and the bag is like 80% little black and gray pieces that you kind of slowly assemble into the diorama. And it was very satisfying. It was very fun, and it was really complicated as like Lego building goes.
Yeah, Lego's gotten real ridiculous.
Right. And it didn't feel like a toy. Right?
Yeah, the Lego has become the new model modeling kits.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Heroscape reminds me of when I would just like look in the Lego bucket and go, what can I make with this?
Yep, exactly. Your imagination is forward in instead of back.
Yeah.
Yep, no, I agree.
All right. Well, that was a pretty epic game of Heroscape. Gentlemen, I thank you for joining me and playing one of my favorite games. Anyone else got any parting words?
Wasn't this on your top 10 list?
It was, it is, and we'll talk about it again when we get to our top 10 list. So yeah, by the way, we don't normally do top 10 lists or top lists or whatever. We normally do just the game that we're playing. But, I think for our 25th episode, we're going to do a top 10 list. So keep an eye out for that, and, should be fun. Additionally, we do have a Discord server, and in the intros and the outros and in the show notes and whatever, I mentioned the Discord server, but we really want to push for people to participate in our Discord, because what we really want to start doing is having you guys and gals pick the games that we play. So if it's a poll that I put up and you guys can vote on it, or if you want to suggest games to us, and if there's a consensus, I would like to let you do that for us. Broaden our horizons, or maybe
get to see something new.
Maybe there's a game that we have that we haven't played that you want to hear about, or you have a favorite game and you want us to trash it because you have bad taste in games.
As long as it's not a racing game, I think it'll be all right.
So we need everyone to go to our Discord and vote for racing games. It's essentially what we're at. But no, check out our Discord. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's new, so
I assume,
wander in, introduce
you're going
yourself.
to give instructions
we will
on
certainly say hello.
how to access the Discord at some point.
It's in the show note. There's links in the show notes.
Yep.
There's
And
links on our website.
Gamesfromthecellar.com.
So yeah, from the website, from the link tree on our Instagram or our Twitter page, the show notes, there's links everywhere to our Discord server. Feel free to join us, drop us a line. Most of us are there pretty much all the time. So, look forward to hearing from you.